Okay, everybody, let's start at the home page where we you should have already gotten all your login information, so I don't think I have to cover that. You should know by now that by clicking on the piece that says economies right here, this is your work that you're supposed to do. So let's dive into that. I have this is meant to give you some better understanding of the material that you're reading and that you're watching. So first, let's start with the business cycle um, document, the interactive one. We'll start at the beginning, and I want to make this short and brief. The idea of the business cycle can last. This makes it seem like it's just like a common thing, almost like a heartbeat, up and down, up and down. But it's not. Sometimes the business cycle can stretch out for decades, and sometimes it can be much shorter. For example, the recession lasted a decade. Just the depression of the 30s, it lasted over a decade. So that's something to keep in mind. And also, there may be economies that come back at different times. Like there may be a part of the economy that comes back, then another part doesn't. Or again, looking at the depression, the stock market came back relatively quickly after it took a great big downfall, but the average citizenry didn't come back into having better lives until after World War II. So I mean that was like 15-year period. So it took the Wall Street and the wealthier part of the economy just a few short years to come back, whereas the rest of the country took over a decade and a half to recover from the Great Depression. So, and that's kind of typical for because the stock market and the ordinary part of life, the jobs that many of your parents have, the jobs that many of your friends' parents have, those get lost quickly but take time to rebuild. And that's why it's very important for a country such as the United States to have a good, strong economy and to continue to have a good, strong economy, because we recognize that the best way we can feed our kids is through having a good, strong economy. So understanding this business cycle, it doesn't just happen automatically. The ups and downs on it don't just happen automatically. That's the point I want to say when it takes when I was giving you the example of the Great Depression. It really depends on the type of policies that are put in place by the government, and that's across the entire world. That's not just in the United States. That's could be policies in other countries that have different economic and political systems. Now, when I say political, I mean the way the government is run. The United States is a country where we have self-government, where we have you or your parents get to pick who will be the representatives to run the country. That is dramatically different than a large segment of the world. So, having said that, I think what you should walk away from this is not only do you need to have these kinds of definitions, but you should also understand that this is not a regular thing. It looks regular on this, but it's not really a regular up and down in a matter of a couple of years. It really depends on policies and who's running the particular government of the particular country that you're talking about. All right, and I guess the other one is the supply and demand chart that I have you looking at. And again, these have good definitions, which you should have the understanding of. But I think I'll give you my example. Nearly everyone has a car, or maybe several cars. Maybe there's several houses on your block that have more than there are drivers, or maybe not. But here's the thing to keep in mind: the demand goes down, right? But it doesn't necessarily stay down. Why is there still all these cars being sold if everyone has a vehicle? What makes people want to get another vehicle? What makes people want to trade in their current vehicle? Why? See, it's not just about having more of it. Because if it was about the demand of having just a number, then everyone has a car that's probably going to have a car. Why do you need to have new cars made? Well, and that gets into the demand. It's not just about having a certain number. It's not. It's about the individual, you or your parents, wanting to have a new car, wanting to have to, their car is too old, or they're fixing it too much, and they say the cost of fixing it is higher than the cost of having a loan to buy a new one, and so they make the decision to trade in the older car for the newer car. So the graph is great for giving you a general understanding, but again, their description on sneakers, when it gets up to supply, and it talks about everyone wants a certain style of sneaker. Well, that's kind of more of a personal choice, right? I mean, you all have footwear. You all have some kind of footwear. Why do you need a pair of sneakers? Why do you need this? Why do you need that? That gets into people finding it necessary to get a second pair. Maybe they can, but if they can't afford it, they have to make a decision. Do we go get ourselves a new pair of sneakers that we can't afford, or do we use the money that we have to pay a certain bill, and we just kind of stretch out the use of the current sneakers? This is the more intricate demand and supply part of it that these things kind of just don't talk about. But you need to understand them. They're real life. They're your life. Your parents may or may not be able to buy you a brand new pair of Jordans or LeBron James sneakers, or whatever brand he's making, because they may have to pay their bills, and that's not something that you should feel bad about. That's just the way life is sometimes, and that's not a mark against them. That's kind of a situational thing that a lot of families are going through, and some aren't, and they can buy their kids all the new fresh stuff that they want, and others have to struggle, and that's okay. It doesn't mean you're any less or any better. It just means that's reality. So looking beyond the chart in front of you, which is a decent chart. I don't want you to think I'm putting it down, but it doesn't take into the intricate details of what people can do and can't do. They may want something, but they may not be able to get it. All right, I want to talk about, actually I'm going to end this video here because I'm going to break this up into two separate videos, one on these resources and one on the other resources for the textbook, the actual textbook work. All right, talk to you soon.